and welcome to today's webinar, which is a waiver provider training on the person-centered planning process, specifically for providers that are providing services for sections 21 and 29 waiver. Topics for today, just as a reminder, this session is meant to be an overview of the PCP process. It will be talking about key principles and concepts of person-centered thinking, do an overview of the new enhanced DS-PCP process as outlined in the new PCP guide, talk about how the person-centered framework has been integrated into our PCP process, and talk about the role of the waiver provider in the PCP process. Please note that technical questions or details about the SIP or Service Implementation Plan will be addressed in more detail in subsequent sessions. This session is meant to be an overview of the PCP process. In today's webinar, I am your host, Miranda Whalen. I am the training coordinator here at the Office of Aging and Disability Services, and I have with me several excellent subject matter speakers, Lisa Sturdivant, Donna Benson, Angela Faulkner, and Emily Kalifarsky. So I will let them take it from here, and I will see you again later.
Good afternoon, everyone, and want to talk to you a little bit as we get into this training about person-centered thinking. When we're talking about person-centered planning and person-centered services, we're really thinking about how we focus first on the people that we're providing support to, both as providers, as a state, and as case managers, thinking about what people want for outcomes in their lives and how we can ensure that the system is person-centered and not centered on the system itself or services. So again, we'll be talking a little bit about that today. When we started this work, we received feedback from individuals receiving services, self-advocates, and families. We also, for a year, had a community membership reform group who made recommendations on changes to the person-centered planning process and ways that the state could enhance ensuring that the process is person-centered and focused on the outcomes that individuals wanted. We also had a settlement agreement with the Department of Justice that helped us to look at our person-centered planning process. And as you know, as providers, we also are in the midst of implementing the home and community-based settings final rule and also the Maine global rule, both of which are hyperlinked here for more information. Talk a little bit about the requirements in the home and community-based setting. As a provider and as a state, we have been talking about this for the last several years. I want to remind people that these are the requirements, and in terms of helping individuals to have the same access to the broader community, engage in community life, have the opportunity to seek employment, control personal resources, be assured the rights of privacy, dignity, respect, and have the opportunities to make informed choices about their lives. So again, at the bottom of the slide, you'll be able to find more information. Additionally, individuals through the home and community-based settings requirements should have a choice regarding the services supports that they receive, who provides those, and in what setting or place that they receive those services. So the rule includes additional standards that are both apply to residential settings owned and controlled by a provider of residential services. So again, if you need further information on that, please see the links on the previous slide. Rights of individuals under the home and community-based settings rule. People have the right to make choices and build relationships, to have privacy, dignity, respect, have a job that matches their interests, and pick services and supports that matter to them and ask an agency to provide those. They also have the right to be in charge of their person-centered planning and choose their own goals and invite who they want to be a part of that process. And when people live in group homes or other residential, they also have additional rights, as we mentioned, things like having a lock on my bedroom door, being able to choose my and enjoy the living areas in my home, being able to have visitors when I want, and other rights that are protected now under the home and community-based settings rule. So as we talk today about person-centered planning, we want you to be thinking about how does the HCBS global rule and process also connect to the person-centered plan and the new supporting documentation. So for providers of services, this is really about how does person-centered planning, the global rule requirements, then connect down to providing those direct services with people who have chosen you as their provider. One of the things that is on our website, but also here we think is helpful, is the Beth Mount video. So you'll have the link to this. We won't watch it right now, but you'll have the link to this. We ask you to think about watching this again, having some thoughts and conversations about person-centered versus system-centered work and how we all can be more focused on the individuals we're supporting. So again, the HCBS settings rule and the Maine global rule have requirements in them that the state is implementing. And those plan requirements require the state and all of us to both look at the clinical and support needs that have been identified through an assessment of functional needs, and also at the same time reflect the members' strengths and preferences. So those two things happening at the same time. For case managers who are supporting individuals around person-centered planning, their role in supporting someone is to help to understand who this person is, to spend time with them, maybe out in the community, doing visits, for coffee or going out, helping to look at services, talk about what they want. They're helping now to identify who's in somebody's life through relationships and natural supports, and also using sample questions that we now have available through the life domains and person-centered planning tools. So again, as we build this new person-centered planning process in Maine, case managers will continue to get to know people and then be able to assist individuals with the development of their person-centered plan. When we talk and share and plan with people, we think about what makes a good life. And for all of us, we know that there are certain things that help us to have the life that we may want or is important to us. And some things that we know that people have said, and we know for ourselves, that family, home, good health, being treated as a person, having a say in my life, being treated with respect, honesty, and fairness, all of these things are important, both to the people we serve and to all of us. So sometimes we have a plan and the plan may not go as planned. So this just, again, helps us to think about when we talk to somebody and plan with somebody, we may think that it's a straight line to somebody's goal, but in actuality, there's a course that may look different or take many turns along the way. If you have not had time to look at our person-centered planning website and our work with charting the life course, we're now starting to focus on life domains. So areas of all of our lives and of people's lives that will help us focus in on what are your goals and where do you want to head in your life. So employment and community engagement, communication and advocacy, home and housing, lifelong learning, social and relationships, healthy living, and safety and security. So all of those areas are areas that we'll plan with for people and then help people to think about what they might want to or need support around in those areas. So again, the link provides the direct resources on our website. As we again think about person-centered thinking and how we support people in their lives, I want to remind you of John O'Brien's 5 valued experiences, which we in Maine have embraced for years. And just again, as we think about supporting people, about this new process, about how we help people to reach their goals in life, that these 5 areas are what we focus on: helping people to grow in relationships by belonging and by through community participation, by having valued roles, by being able to support and contribute to my community, by having choice and control in my life, and being in ordinary places. So again, John O'Brien's 5 valued experiences. A large part of person-centered planning in the home and community-based settings rule is our work to help people to build relationships with new people, to strengthen relationships that they have had in their lives, and to focus in on how do we help people to meet individuals and build those networks. So we had hired Dr. Angela Amato to help us with some of that work. So remember that her work is available to you on our website, and you can use her Friends Manual for some tools and planning on how to help people identify who's currently in their life and plan for connections and new relationships. In the work of building relationships, there are different ones to think about with people. And a lot, again, of services and supports is helping people to meet other individuals in community and helping them to connect. So whether it's paid relationships, building acquaintances, being regulars in places in the community, or helping people to find and make relationships and friendships, all of that, again, are things that we focus in on as we assist people with their goals in their life and also connecting to community and building those relationships. There's a relationship map from Dr. Amato, again, available on our website to assist us with helping to plan around building relationships. And lastly, I want to just remind people that as we think and plan and talk and spend time with people that we support, to help to think about what things are important to somebody and what's important for somebody, and to help, again, as we implement services, as we talk about person-centered planning, what things, again, are important to somebody, those people, those places, those routines, to make somebody at their best. And then what do we also need to consider for health and safety, dignity of risk, and a person's right to self-determination. So again, helping us to think about important to and important for as we plan with people. The balance of health and safety in all of this is critical. So we ask that you assist people in calculating and planning risks and understanding that that's all part of engaging fully in life. And so as we, again, support people around person-centered planning, exploring what's available to them, learning new things, that we also plan and help to support them around the dignity of risk.
All right, we're going to dig into the PCP process a little bit more here, some of the specifics that's in the plan and the provider role in the process. The About Me section in the PCP is where the case manager is going to capture information that the person wants folks to know about them, what they want people to consider important in their life, important for them, how to communicate with them, what technology they use, the best ways to support them, and what doesn't work for them as far as support or recommendations or any of those things. So this is a place in the plan where you're going to get a lot of information, background, sort of centering everyone on what the person wants known about them and how they want to be supported. The enhanced PCP process has a five-phase approach. And as of June 1st, this new enhanced process should be used for all new annual plans or folks newly coming into case management, having not had a PCP prior. The provider part of the process occurs in phases 3 and 4, and we're going to look at an overview of those processes. We'll dive into it more deeply in another session, but we'll at least look at those phases and how those pieces come together. So this hasn't really changed much, the timelines. The plan meeting should be 30 to 60 days before the effective date of the new annual or the new plan. And the case manager is going to be working with the person as far as, setting the date and things like that. The provider, you'll be, doing your preparation for the meeting if you're invited, and we'll get into who's invited and all that in a little bit. But these are the steps that are going on during that phase 3. Going back to what Lisa talked about with the HCBS settings rule and global rule, there's a lot of things that are required when writing person-centered plans and in all the pieces that are attached to them. The plans should be able to be read and understood by the member, their guardians if they have them, family members, basically anyone who would have access to the plan should have access to the plan, so that they understand not only what the person wants in their life, but how the services and supports, paid and unpaid, are going to support them and provide support to them in achieving those goals. The process should be led by the person or representative as much as possible. As far as the meeting goes, the person themselves gets to decide who's coming to the meeting. The representative guardian also has a say in that. And then the case manager and others who support the member are going to provide any support that they require to direct the process as much as possible, making decisions at the meeting, after the meeting, actually all during the process. And the meeting really needs to be convenient for the person involved and not just for providers or for case managers or guardians, but really for the person themselves in a time that's comfortable and a place that's comfortable for them. And of course, as always, we're going to make sure that we are attending to any cultural considerations of the member, their family, guardian, and others at the meeting. Continuing on, so informed choices about where the person receives services and from whom. The where, again, going back to not just disability specific places, but places in their community that they want to spend time, where they want to make friends or become better acquainted with people. And then the providers, or even within providers, the staff that they work with best if possible. The plan's going to talk about a method for the person to request updates, whether that is they contact their case manager, or if providers get information from the person that they want to make changes, how's that going to go? Do you then contact the case manager? All of that's going to be documented in the plan so that everybody knows what that process is and can follow it. Any alternative HCBS settings that were considered and whether they are accepted or rejected and why needs to be documented. And then, of course, strategies for solving conflict or disagreement, which a lot of you are already doing in the PCPs. That's going to be a continuing part of that. This would include the grievance and appeals processes as well. So as far as the planning team, the team that's going to meet at the annual plan meeting, the member is going to choose who gets to attend. Per main care rule, that it needs to be the member, their guardian if they have one, their correspondent if they have one, and the case manager. The member then is also allowed to invite any folks that they would like to come into their meeting and to be a part of it. So this means, yes, providers may attend the PCP meeting if they are invited by the member. That invitation may come from the case manager as a way of letting you know about it, but the member is going to decide who's actually at their annual meeting. If provider staff are at the meeting, the case manager is going to follow up with the person afterward just to make sure that all the discussion, all the decisions is really what the person wants. And then that's going to go into the case manager's write-up of the meeting. Of course, we're going to include individual identified goals and the desired outcomes that the person wants to have, their strengths, preferences, and needs around paid and unpaid services, going back to what's important to and what it's important for them, all of those details. All services and supports that are needed to meet health, safety, and functional needs should be documented in the plan. And also explain how those are going to support the member. Identification of risk factors, plans to minimize them, backup plans, strategies, all of that. Those are also important for all the services and supports and need to be part of the plan as well. The plan continues to need to have someone identified as the monitor for the plan to make sure that the services and supports continue to meet the members' health, safety, and functional needs, to support their goals and desired outcomes, and are in the settings that they wish to be supported. There has to be informed consent for all services and supports, and everyone who has a piece in the development of the plan and the SIP and all providing of all the services has a piece in that. So everyone's going to be checking with a member to make sure that they are making informed decisions. The plan will be distributed to the member and everyone else involved in the person-centered plan. Usually that's done by the case manager. They would send copies. The case manager also needs to make sure and help the person prevent provision of unnecessary or inappropriate services and supports, document any HCBS requirement modifications, and also include the member's desire for or participation in self-directed services. The planning meeting discussion is really important, as we all know, and there are some key factors that should be included in every plan meeting. Vision and goals of the member. What do they want? What's their good life? What's their definition? What do they want their life to look like? How is that going to happen? As Lisa said, the important to and the important for, and the goals are identified across all those life domains of the person, the ones that are, especially the ones that are important to and for them. It's going to discuss and review the strengths, barriers, or needs of the person, whether those are personal or resources, and any assessed needs, whether it be the BMS 99, any of the risk factor, however that's assessed, any assessments around a member's health, safety, and functional needs. The meeting's also going to discuss all services and supports needed by the person. That includes supports from community members, natural supports, any unpaid supports in all settings possible, non-waiver services if applicable, VR, other medical or dental services needed, counseling, other paid but not waiver services, and then specifically the waiver services that meet the member's health, safety, and functional needs. These should be services that are not only the team determines that are required to meet those needs, but that the person actually wants to have as well. The case manager and the planning team, or the case manager and the guardian and the person are going to have decided prior to a provider being involved the types of services that are required, the number of hours per week or day, the frequency, how often that occurs, and the duration of services. And that's going to be in the plan even before there's a provider chosen to provide that service. That information is going to include where the person wants to receive those services and should include some non-disability specific settings. If the providers are known, then the providers are going to be, identified in that plan. And if it's not known, then the case manager is going to be sending out vendor calls or, checking in with local providers to see who has capacity. So depending on where the person is in the process, whether they already have services or they are going to be classified, they've got a recent offer and they're just going to start receiving services, that information will be tailored to their specific circumstance and where they are in that process.
So case managers will be using a SMART goal model with the person for the development of their goals. Using this approach helps PCP goals to be observable and measurable, which helps all to understand if and when progress is being made, to consider if goals should be adjusted if something is not working. Goals are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. Here is an example of how to develop a SMART goal. Julia has an interest in cooking. Is there a cooking course or a group in the community? Can she cook for a public meal, or soup kitchen, or a bake sale? Would she like to explore paid employment in a cooking role? Here are some goals that are related to Julia's interest in cooking. She'll cook a meal independently for her family once a week. She'll visit at least 5 businesses in her community over a 3-month period to make desserts for sale or serving. And she'll volunteer to make cookies for guests at the Ronald McDonald House once a month. These all allow her to explore her interests and contribute to her family. So here are some goals that are for John. John has a dream of owning a bike and riding it in his community. He's started learning about his neighborhood and local community by walking with his staff and his brother. His team could have told him that this was an unrealistic goal, as he does not own a bicycle or have the funds to purchase one, and in addition needs to learn safety skills. Instead, John's team chose to believe in his ability to learn bicycle safety and access technology. They trusted his community, family, and staff to provide the support he will need to work towards his goal. So here are some goal examples for John's dream. He will learn to ride a bike safely by going on a bike ride once a week with his brother or a staff of his choice. He will join a local bike club to establish some relationships with biking riding enthusiasts. John will also be able to access his community independently using his bike. So part of helping people with their goals and making individual choices includes the concept of dignity of risk. Dignity of risk is the right to take risks when engaging in life experiences and the right to fail in those activities. Seeking and finding balance between self-determination and overall health and safety is a goal of planning. It is possible to honor choices and mitigate risks. Lack of experiences and overprotection can result in lowered expectations, learned dependency, low self-esteem, and underachievement. In planning for choices and risks, we need to learn why the goal is important to the person. What are the potential risks and benefits, as well as alternatives to the activity the person has chosen? HCBS requires PCPs to include planning for these choices and risks. So going back to our example of Julia and her desire to cook a meal independently for her family once a week. This goal may extend to being able to cook independently when she wants. In planning for risks with Julia, we would explore why it's important. She wants to prepare meals on her own. What are the potential risks, injury, safety concerns? What are the potential benefits? She's contributing to her family. What are some alternative choices? Meal prep with family members. What is the plan to mitigate risks? Training, smoke detectors, and the backup plan could be prepping a meal with support. Here's an example of planning for choices and risks for John's goal for riding his bike in the community. So why is it important? Well, John wants to be more independent. What are the potential risks? He could be injured. He could be vulnerable to exploitation. The potential benefits, that he would become an active member of his community. The alternatives that would be available are maybe joint outings with friends or family. Mitigating risks may include safety training, staff being available for him to contact, and a backup plan of having support available to him by phone. Waiver services may be needed to help the person achieve their goals and a vision for a good life. Services will be identified with the person, guardian if applicable, and the case manager. The services and where they happen are based on needs and preferences of the person. The PCP process identifies the amount, frequency, and type of service for the person to receive in the most integrated setting. Waiver providers will no longer enter any information into the PCP. Unmet needs are now captured in a specific dimension in the PCP. An unmet need is a gap in resources to address identified specific needs or desires of the person. So here we return to our example of John, who has a goal of riding his bike around his community independently. But he currently needs a bicycle to achieve his goal, and he doesn't own one. The unmet need is described, the related goals identified, and an interim plan is developed. Finalizing the PCP. The PCP is finalized based on what is learned before and during the plan meeting. At the conclusion of that plan meeting, the case manager drafts the PCP by capturing the discussion and decisions made. If the person chooses to include a paid provider of service on their planning team, the case manager will meet separately with the person to confirm that the PCP reflects what the person wants and needs, and finalize it by securing all required signatures.
Good afternoon, folks. We've now reached phase 4 of the PCP process. So I'll be speaking about the service implementation plan and afterwards. So as you'll see, very broadly, 3 steps will define this phase. First will be vendor selection, if necessary. Next will be development of the service implementation plans. And last will be finalizing a SIP, typically through hosting a SIP meeting. So we hope you're aware at this point, but if there are folks that are perhaps new to our service system or trying to catch up, what is a service implementation plan? Essentially, it's a new form that will be attached to the developmental services PCP in EIS or client data system. It'll be documenting as waiver providers what your service delivery strategies are for the waiver services that have been identified, and specifically how those waiver services will support the person's goals. Again, one other important part of a SIP is that we really think it will ensure that there'll be clear expectations so that waiver providers will know how to adhere to what the person's PCP outlines in terms of, again, their goals and outcomes that they're hoping for. A SIP will also include specific timeframes and strategies for that goal implementation. So again, we've touched on that previously: specific, measurable, and achievable. And just to give a bit of context, I think I saw a question come in about, gee, what could a waiver provider do if they see a goal that's not specific? It's coming to them, it's pretty general. Certainly a stated goal is a stated goal. I would never want anyone telling me, if that goal isn't right. But we hope that as case managers start to think more about the SMART goal model, that again, when a person shares a goal, a case manager is able to gently ask some questions that will perhaps clarify and move it a bit more towards a SMART goal perspective in a way that, of course, is acceptable to that person. So just aside from that brief tangent there, I want to get back to the core elements of what a SIP is. It'll address a person's needs and risk factors. And of course, also it'll consider all those elements there: reportable events, safety plans, positive support plans, behavior management plans, and HCBS requirement modification addendums as might be applicable. So again, as folks might know, an overview of our new PCP process considering SIPs. We'll have case managers who are working with a member in their circle of support, their planning team, to develop and finalize that PCP. And that PCP will include, of course, goals and services. So those services will specify what are the type, amount, frequency, and duration that the person's looking for. So very importantly, a service implementation plan is developed by waiver providers after that PCP is finalized. And just to clarify, there may be folks here outside of section 21 and 29. For section 18, 21, and 29, the SIP will be completed in EIS. For section 20 providers, it will be considered outside of our client data system. So in terms of developing the SIP, we wanted to think about this. Hopefully it will be helpful for folks today to think about it in terms of different roles of different people involved. So that case manager will be conducting a vendor call if needed, if it's a person that is looking for a waiver provider for services. And again, the case manager would work with the person to make sure, okay, is this provider a good fit? Is this what I'm looking for? Case manager will also be making sure that selected providers see the PCP or components of it so that they know how that they could be developing an effective and tailored SIP. That case manager would also be making sure that there's calls or other dialogues between providers and the person. And of course, they could include planning team members if they like, to discuss what kind of settings and services are desired. So again, is it a disability specific, non-disability specific setting? And then, of course, the case manager will assist the person in selecting providers who will then draft the proposed SIPs. So now turning to the waiver provider's role with SIP development. We expect that waiver providers would review in the PCP and through conversations what that member is looking for in terms of their desired outcomes, goals, preferences, what they're interested in the community. Of course, goals related to employment. What's their preferred communication, learning style, anything else that they think is really key to understanding them and what they're looking for services to meet those needs. We also really expect that a waiver provider at the time of answering a vendor call, or again, considering how they will continue to support a person, thinking about their agency staff, how available, how can you identify if it's possible to fully or partially meet a need. So of course, we're talking about here services that, for example, if a person was saying, I'm looking for 40 hours a week of home support quarter hour. As an agency, could you fully or partially meet that need? And then of course, who are the appropriate staff who would discuss services and supports with the member? Now continuing again, still about SIP development here, the waiver provider would then proceed to develop the SIP. Again, after the information they've received with the member and their case manager or care coordinator. And then of course, as an ongoing responsibility, you'd be revising a SIP as goals and outcomes are met or at the request of the member or their case manager. So folks will know from your experience so far, or perhaps from looking at some resources on our PCP webpage, the screenshots of the SIP. One of the first sections is called assurances. So of course, we want to make sure that a SIP is understandable, just like a PCP should be. We want to make sure that it's identifying the person who's responsible for monitoring, informed consent of the person receiving services, that there'll be a review and update, as I just mentioned, at least every 12 months, or when needs or circumstances change, or at the person's request. And again, we want you to identify the purpose of support. The service planning section, again, of course, using communication preferences and learning style in conversations. The summary should reflect that. When did that service planning happen? Who spoke with the person to review their previous plan, learn their current goals? And those next 6 bullets or so, they're expanded upon a bit. Folks will know that's a long narrative section there, but the main themes are, again, we want to make sure the waiver provider addresses those themes of strengthening community involvement, participation, increasing natural support, of course, speaking to competitive integrated employment, supported retirement if applicable, how a person could increase or maintain their control over personal resources, and how they'd be accessing transportation. So I know that questions came in about timeframes for completing a SIP, so I'll touch on that here. So again, fairly simple, I think, it's a number to keep in mind, 10 days generally, unless there's a member agreed upon day. I don't want to spend too much time, so we can leave plenty of time for questions. But again, we're looking for a SIP to be submitted to a case manager when accepting a new referral within 10 business days, when continuing within 10 business days of a request or a member agreed upon date. And similarly with revisions to a SIP, or there's changes needed to action steps or tasks associated with goals. We want to remind folks, of course, that a SIP has to be reviewed and approved by the member, guardian, case manager before it's considered finalized. All right, so that last piece to expand upon for finalizing a service implementation plan. The case manager's role would be to assist the person and perhaps their planning team to review and accept or reject a proposed SIP. It may be necessary at that point, if not already occurred, or if it's necessary to connect again to schedule a meeting to review a SIP and to coordinate. Of course, you could be coordinating between providers and natural supports. One goal, of course, could be addressed by multiple people, so it's important to coordinate those people and providers. Consider any newly identified unmet needs. Are there interim plans needed to address those gaps? And then again, based upon those discussions, you've had that review. Do you need to refine the SIPs? After that point, you'd be finalizing a SIP. It would be considered finalized with the person or in the guardian, if applicable's approval. And if needed, a case manager would certainly support a person to choose another provider if desired. We wanted to touch upon some common technical issues. This may be relevant for folks as I saw some questions roll in. Sometimes we've heard from providers that have had browser compatibility issues. So we want to remind folks when using Edge to make sure it's an Internet Explorer mode. That's important. Sometimes there's been difficulties with the lack of a provider relationship, as it's called, within EIS or client data system. So we want to make sure folks know, waiver providers know, that case management agencies can contact the appropriate ODE staff to add that relationship. That's the correct process there. And we also want to make sure people are aware that there are multiple ways to create a SIP during this transition period. A lot of times been put into our frequently asked questions, and certainly I know that there'll be updates, of course, based upon new questions that have come in. So if you have questions about what's option 1, what's option 2, what's appropriate based upon an urgent situation or a routine situation with changes to services, take a look at that FAQ. It's number 10 that folks have found very helpful. And that email address there below, I really encourage folks, I think I saw some questions coming in about, I need to submit a SIP and I need some technical assistance, I'm having issues. Please use that email address, because our EIS team can't know of technical issues unless we hear from you directly. And similarly with different themes of questions. Again, it's really been helpful for us to have that centralized email so we can get all the questions together and have some standard processes of answering them and also adding them to our FAQ. So please feel free to use it. Really encourage it. So finally, leaving phase 4, so leaving the SIP process, I just want to touch briefly about what happens after that. We're talking about monitoring. A lot of these actions are with the case manager, but you'll see in a moment there's also some waiver provider actions as well. So again, in what we call phase 5 of the PCP process, the case manager would be monitoring at least monthly things like member satisfaction, are service and supports being implemented as they should be according to the plan. How about progress on goals? Is it being made, or if not, are changes being implemented? As folks know, the SIP does a great job outlining what will the frequency be and who specifically from the waiver provider will be talking with the member. So it'll be really, we hope, fairly straightforward for a case manager to know if that's happening. And that again, that all supports and services should be effectively coordinated. So as folks may know, a case manager during this time will be continuing to use person-centered thinking tools, scheduling time with a person or with people that know them well, of course, to encourage these increased experiences and further inform assessment, not just happening in a concentrated sense at one time of the year, but on an ongoing basis. So again, at this point during phase 5, I want to also make sure folks are about provider actions that are expected. As we've touched on before, it's certainly expected that you will be revising a SIP as goals and outcomes are met or at a request of a member case manager. Again, the ongoing monitoring as the SIP outlines in relation to specific goals and tasks associated with those goals. Of course, daily documentation and updating that SIP at least annually or as needed. To highlight here, really, what we found is a really helpful tool for many folks when it comes to person-centered thinking. This is a life trajectory tool, which remind folks that really what we're talking about here is not service outcomes, but what are the life outcomes that a person is looking for.
Hello, everyone. Back to me. I am here as host to wrap up our presentation a little bit. I'll do a quick kind of speedy tour of some resources that we've pulled out that we thought would be helpful. Most of these slides also have links to them. So when you get a copy of the slides, which I neglected to note at the beginning, I apologize. All attendees will receive a copy of these slides very shortly, and they will also most likely be posted on our website with the recording from today. So it will be available. You'll have all of these links, which is why we put them in there. So please don't try and write all of this down. But we want to bring attention to some of the updates that we've made to the website. Under the provider section, there is a new person-centered planning webpage with quite a lot of links to these tools and various things. I had a question about the PCP guide, the new guide that came out with these 5 steps. It's on this page. The FAQs document is on this page. So those are shown here. So some really helpful documents are here for you to be able to review, along with links to other person-centered thinking tools. There's also links to provider trainings that have already been recorded and posted on here. So if you're looking for something that goes into more detail on what goes on the SIP, there is a service implementation plan recording on here. And as I mentioned, we also do plan to hold some live webinars on the service implementation plan. In the frequently asked questions document, we pulled out some of the questions that are really the star of the frequently asked questions, the ones that probably get asked 2 or 3 times more often than all the others. So when you get a copy of this PowerPoint, it will be emailed to you by myself. Feel free to take a look at these questions. If these are questions that you have also had, your answer is written in that frequently asked questions document. So please review that, see if it helps you answer the question that you have. One that was submitted quite a few times on the registration form was who locks the SIP? Number 35 in your frequently asked questions document will help you out here. Also on our website is some information about charting the life course. There's also a link to a recording of a session we had with UMKC, who presented on charting the life course, which was great, all about person-centered thinking. So please go visit some of that information to help you understand where a lot of these resources are coming from and how we developed the new PCP process, where these life domains came from. There are links under each of these life domains that give you information about the domain and then some tools to use to help guide that person and some questions to ask them as they're considering each life domain. Some additional tools, we have some transition guides that are from Charting the Life course, Transition to Adulthood, focusing on adulthood and focusing on aging. So depending on who you're providing services to, you may find some of that information helpful for your either yourself or your client, as well as tools such as that life stage trajectory that Emily mentioned. Along with the Angela Amato training, there is also activity worksheets on that are actual activities to help support someone to build relationships in their communities. So if you're wondering, what can I do to help the person that I'm supporting, go check out some of these activities. You may find them very useful. I also have a link here for resources, again, for supporting people to build relationships in their communities. There's a whole slew of links on this document. When you go open it up, go check them out, and you may find them useful. And then we also know that some software providers have been creating new tools around documentation of HCBS compliance. So we just wanted to bring attention to this one that was provided to us as an example from TheraP. So they've developed tools for non-residential and residential settings. So depending on what software you're using, maybe you're using TheraP, go check out these tools and see if it works for your documentation needs. And then as a wrap up, some takeaways from today that we really hope that you walk away with around the PCP. So it's member driven. The goals are about the member's life. The PCP connects to service implementation, and that service implementation is what supports HCBS compliance. So just to tie everything together, why are we talking about HCBS at a PCP meeting? This is why, because really what you're doing helps support that compliance. And the SIP is what the provider staff does to implement that PCP. So takeaways around service. Make sure you know the scope of the service you provide. Identify how those services are being implemented. You are still required to have daily documentation. And these services must promote life experiences that move that member towards their good life. So another takeaway we hope you have is those 5 valued experiences. These are meant to guide you as you plan for and provide services. I know there was a question in the chat. When can we expect more training? We have booked a date on the calendar for September 28th, and there'll be a notice coming out with the Zoom information. But from 9 to 10 a.m., we'll be talking about the SIP for residential service providers and 3 to 4 community support or non-residential service providers. So we really hope that you can join us there. It won't be our only conversation. Like I said, this is meant to be ongoing. We'll do more of a deep dive into the plans, do some best practice examples. And again, that will come out via our listserv. So make sure that you are subscribed.